And tonight, America mourns the passing of former President Carter. The 39th U.S. president died earlier today at the age of 100. The Carter Center says he was surrounded by family at his Plains, Georgia home when he died peacefully. Carter served only one term as president, but he went on to a distinguished second act of humanitarian work. And just moments ago, the White House announced that a state funeral for Carter will be held in Washington on January 9th. It will be held at the National Cathedral. The president has also scheduled a national day of mourning that day. There will also be a public observance in Atlanta, followed by a private interment in Plains, Georgia. And tributes are pouring in tonight. In Washington, flags are at half-staff at the Capitol and the White House. And here in New York, the Empire State Building was lit up in red, white, and blue in Carter's honor. And our Derick Waller joins us now with a look back at the life and times of the man from Plains, Georgia.
Natalie, good evening to you. And really, Jimmy Carter's legacy extends far beyond his time in the White House. But his work always brought him back home to Georgia, where so many are paying their respects tonight. Outside the Jimmy Carter Presidential Center in Atlanta, a growing memorial of flowers and candles for Georgia's native son. While in Washington, President Joe Biden remembered a man he called a friend for more than 50 years.
Millions of people all around the world, all over the world, feel they lost a friend as well, even though they never met him. And that's because Jimmy Carter lived a life measured not by words, but by his deeds.
The peanut farmer turned president came from a religious family and married his wife Rosalind in 1946. The Carters became partners in life and in their future political and humanitarian endeavors. Jimmy Carter was elected to the Georgia Senate in 1962, governor in 1971, and president 5 years later. A relative unknown, capitalizing on the country's yearning for change after Watergate.
This inauguration ceremony marks a new beginning.
As president, Carter established the Departments of Education, Energy, and FEMA. He also helped to return the Panama Canal to Panama, and in 1978 helped establish peace between Egypt and Israel. Stubbornly high inflation and an energy crisis that produced gas shortages marred his presidency. Then came the Iranian hostage crisis.
If there's one subject that literally never leaves my mind, it's the 53 innocent Americans that have been held so long.
Carter took the bulk of the blame for a botched rescue attempt. The president's popularity dipped, and in 1980, Ronald Reagan easily swept the election. Randy Lewis worked in the Carter White House.
He faced some extraordinary challenges that many presidents haven't faced within certainly a 4-year time frame, and being part of the staff and managing that was quite extraordinary.
For President Carter's second act, he started the Carter Center, promoting human rights and democracy around the world, earning him a Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. Then came Habitat for Humanity. Volunteering into his 90s, Carter helped build more than 4,000 homes, even after a fall in 2019.
I had a #1 priority, and that was to come to Nashville to build houses.
Carter was diagnosed with liver and brain cancer in 2015, but took the news in stride.
I've had an exciting and adventurous and gratifying existence. So I was surprisingly at ease, much more so than my wife was.
That followed months later by another big announcement. He was cancer-free.
They don't have any sign of cancer right now.
Carter entered hospice in February 2023, marking his 77th wedding anniversary with Rosalind that summer. She died in November of that year at 96. President Carter, 10 months into hospice at the time, attended her funeral in a wheelchair under a blanket adorned with his wife's face. President Carter reflected on his legacy in a 2018 interview with Jane Pauley.
I would say, as far as public service is concerned, I was a champion of peace and human rights. I've sought to carve out for myself a productive and, I hope, useful and certainly a gratifying life.
And Jimmy Carter is survived by his 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and 14 great-grandchildren. Natalie, he did have a grandson who passed away in 2015.
Derick, thank you so much. And tonight, all former living presidents are paying tribute to Carter. President-elect Donald Trump said the challenges Jimmy faced as president came at a pivotal time for our country, and he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude. Former President Obama wrote, President Carter taught all of us what it means to live a life of grace, dignity, justice, and service. Michelle and I send our thoughts and prayers to the Carter family and everyone who loved and learned from this remarkable man. George W. Bush says he was loyal to his family, his community, his country. President Carter dignified the office, and his efforts to leave behind a better world didn't end with the presidency. And Bill Clinton's statement reads, Hillary and I mourn the passing of President Jimmy Carter and give thanks for his long, good life. Guided by his faith, President Carter lived to serve others until the very end. CBS chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joined us earlier this evening to discuss President Carter's impact on America and the political arena.
Cut forward a new path for civil rights, for the ending of racial discrimination in Georgia, in the South, and that made him a star, politically speaking, and enabled him to run for president and win as an outsider in 1976. And though he was defeated in 1980, he has left a legacy of service to not only his country, but to the world.
Costa says Carter was a constant presence in American life, even in recent decades, working on health, human rights, and peace. Among President Carter's notable trips to New York City was a tour of the South Bronx in 1977. Carter was joined by Housing and Urban Development Secretary Patricia Harris and New York Mayor Abe Beame. The trip highlighted the extreme blight that had become emblematic of urban decay. Carter visited Charlotte Street, which was devastated by arson and neglect. And stay with CBS News New York for the latest on the death of former President Jimmy Carter. For much more on his life and legacy, go to cbsnewyork.com.